2.
Check, check. We are live, and we are here today again with a new show, a brand new show.
You.
Here, you know. And in studios, we have with us a new friend, if I may call him that. We have with us Mr. Akeem Huggins. And it's interesting, the unfolding of this week's show was fortuitous, if I may say that. This is one of our listeners. He's just been explaining to us that he's been a fan of the show for a while, and he decided to come on and share just a part of his journey. So, Mr. Huggins, how have you been, sir?
I've been really grateful, just trying to be content. Good afternoon, you can hear me? I'm just being grateful and just being content and just trusting life process and just understanding, where I want to go forward in life. And understanding that, it's just going to take some time and just slowing down the gratification and just trusting the process and understand that, every mistake and every flaw is something that serves a purpose.
It serves a purpose in life. Okay. And in our prior conversations, you wanted to talk about something that's personal to you, and you also wanted to talk about mental health.
Yes.
So, let's talk about your journey with mental health before we get into the personal aspect of things, because I think that's a little bit deeper.
Okay, no problem, growing up, I was verbally abused and physical abuse and emotionally manipulated as a child. Even though it wasn't my parents' intentions, just watching them, just looking at where they came from, that's the way they were showing love.
Right.
So it just differentiating different stuff. I was, I was kind of a bit, I wouldn't say laid back, but like I was just a little timid growing up. Like I was a little soft. Like I had a low self-esteem. I had a poor sense of self. So it affected me mentally, and I was depressed, and it led me to I had suicide thoughts, and it just led me to swallow my pride and get the necessary help I need.
Okay. So, but then you touched on parenting,
Yes.
and you touched on your parents, their style of interaction
Okay.
was detrimental, and they probably didn't recognize that some of the things that they were doing were hurtful to you. They didn't think that you registered on that deep psychological level what they were doing. What made you come to that realization?
Well, I would say when I was the age at 12, I just took a step back and just looked at certain things, and the way that we function as a society is not really normal. The way how we, go about doing things, the way that we speak to each other, is verbally abusive.
Yeah.
It just become a norm. It's okay to disrespect somebody. It just okay, and it just never really registered with me. Like I always wanted to do things different.
Different in what way?
Well, just color outside the box, color outside the box, they tell you go to school, do this, but I would just spontaneous, honestly. Like you could book me a one ticket, to go anywhere in the world, just give me some money and a cash, and I will live my best life.
Yeah.
Like so, I just open to life experiences actually.
And so you feel like, because what I'm picking up is, even as a child you were introspective,
Yes,
and you were introverted to some extent.
yes, I am an introvert.
Okay. So, because that introversion would lead you to being comfortable with being on your own and starting over.
Yes.
So, that level of detachment. Okay. So, how did you get to a place of, I would call it solace? How did you get to a place of finding self? Or how did you start that journey of finding self after realizing that there was some manipulation in early life and navigating that? How did you get to this place?
Well, I would say early up in the year, I was just in a bad place mentally. Home was unhealthy, work was unhealthy, and I was unhealthy, and I just couldn't exist in that. I just couldn't coexist being that person anymore. So, I was being physical with a lady actually, and I just felt empty. And when we finished doing what we did, and I just couldn't do it no more. And there was just enough time for me to just really think on what I wanted to do going forward. I quit my job. I gave them my two resignation. And the following week, I was in a counseling. I went to the counseling center and got the necessary help I need. I would just go in there talking about situation, adjusting my emotions the best way that I can. And I had two epiphanies, to be honest with you. You know, I was a lady, telling me why you quit your job. And like after, getting some awareness, it's like something hit me in my head and said, it's not personal. And I was home, I was just watching up in the roof one day, and the next epiphany just come in, he said, this life you're living is about self-love. So I just did the necessary work, like some of the stuff I went on to YouTube. You have YouTube pages like Psychology to Go. That's a very good, it's animation, but it talks about a lot about mental health.
Yeah, I'm familiar.
Then he has therapy in a nutshell. Then he has Med Circle, and he has TED Talks. The other things that create awareness about mental health. Because in our culture, there's not much awareness, but there's a sense of awareness coming along now.
Looking at you and just interacting with you, you don't give the outward appearance. And I don't know if it's fair to say that there's an outward appearance of mental health, because I guess mental health is something that you can't see, right?
Right.
But just listening to your story, it makes me think there are a lot of persons that are walking and traveling through the road of life, interacting on a daily basis, and have all of these burdens, these mental burdens on them, traumas from the past, things that they're still carrying. What do you feel, being somebody that's, going through this transition, what do you feel is one of the steps that someone should take if they feel like life is a little bit too much? Because we see it all the time. We see people acting out in different ways, their relationship's not going the way that they want it to go, and the men lash out. So
my assessment to that is just being honest with your emotion, being honest with yourself, If something happens to you, just take a step back. If you're not in the space to adjust that emotion at that certain time, when you get some personal time to yourself, you just step back and really ask yourself, like, why do I feel this way? Like, is this space or environment or in this relationship that I'm in, is it this person a healthy person to be around? The environment, is it healthy? Is it conducive for me to grow? Is it affecting me emotionally? Is it affecting me mentally? Just be honest with yourself and assess it the best way you can.
okay.
Like, I got a question. You said that, home was unhealthy and work was unhealthy to some degree. And I don't want to make it seem as though, putting on any of your experiences. But I just want to ask a question about when you said work was unhealthy, but you said at the end that you was unhealthy as well. Do you feel like sometimes that you might have projected, especially in the work front, like the way that you was feeling until experiences you had at work? Like, let's say that somebody may have said something to you, and their intent might not have been to disrupt you in any way. They might have just been like talking, because in our culture, we like to heckle as well.
Yes, you do.
And sometimes some people don't really like it. They don't appreciate it, and they don't understand it. They don't really receive it in the right way. But sometimes, depending on how your mindset is, it filters into maybe like a pessimistic mindset where you feel like, yo, this person got something against me, but really it's really something that's inside of you that's filtering out that bit, because it may not even be that. So you think that because of the challenges that you might have with the mental health stuff, now that you're an adult, do you think that sometimes you filter out things based on how you feel and not really like what's in reality?
Yeah, sometimes, the way, to be honest with you, I was just like a pressure cooker. Like, I didn't really know how to assess my emotions. So, if it's like you're a dog and you keep on barking, you keep on teasing the dog, you keep on teasing, eventually it's going to attack you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way I dealt with my emotions. So, it wasn't the best and the healthiest form to go about it. But I understand your point of view. I was just never really taught how to assess my emotions, so I did it in the most unhealthiest way.
So you didn't really have a way to really to manage your triggers.
No.
And then when you went to like your sessions and therapy and stuff like that, that helped you to kind of manage some of those triggers in a sense.
Yes.
Or that's helping you right now.
It is helping me.
Yeah. Do you do any additional things outside of therapy to manage, those triggers, like in terms of maybe exercising?
Well, yes. Like once a month, I go with a cool and a chair, and I just go to the beach and I speak by myself and just be. that is very therapeutic to me. I do yoga. Yoga is a way that I transfer my energy. And I've been doing a little bit of journaling, writing down and assessing my emotions. And just being honest with me, like going in a conversation with myself, maybe I might be in my room, and just going in a conversation with myself and say, how do you feel today? How are you feeling? Like, what made you feel this way? How can you make it better? Do you need to take away yourself from this situation? And sometimes I have a diffuse in my room and have a candle, so sometimes I just palm the diffuse and light my candle.
Set the mood.
Set the mood. Yeah.
All right. So let's go a little bit deeper, because I feel like in this conversation, we could give it some context, and we could also allow you to deep dive if you want to deep dive. So I think we started from a place of you transitioning through, let's say, a trauma. You transitioning through a trauma and getting to a better place. But what do you feel was the genesis of all of these feelings that you had outside of the parents and the verbal abuse, or what you might have experienced as a child? Because I feel like lots of children experience that because parents operate in an unconscious way. We as parents, so I'll take some ownership as well, we as parents operate in those unconscious ways and we harm children. But what do you feel, and you might know, you might be able to put your finger on it now that you're doing the deep work, is the genesis of a lot of these feelings that you have?
May I quick understand the question? Explain that.
So you're dealing with mental issues. You might have had some trauma that is heavy, and in trying to process those traumas, you felt like you didn't handle it the best way. But everything has a start. So I'm asking if you've identified what was the start of your trauma. Is there a specific event?
Like the root cause. You during your journey, or during the process of discovery that you're going through presently, have you ever like pinpoint what's the root cause of it?
Okay, I know what you're talking about now. I'm like, some of the triggers, I guess, people teasing me. One of the triggers is that when you speak to me in a verbal abuse, I used to shut down. So if you talk to me with a high-pitched voice, I would just shut down. So I would just shut down and just be unaware of what you're saying and just go into my condo, and that's just the way I used to deal with it.
Okay, now that's a trigger.
Yes.
So then if somebody spoke to you with a certain tone, it would trigger you,
Yes.
right? Why is that triggering for you? Is it that something that you grew up with before when you was younger, that somebody spoke to you in that way? So, because sometimes we have, like, I might be speaking to someone, right? And they might speak to me in a high-pitched voice, like an alarming voice, and it could make me get anxious, right? But that might have came from like my mom, calling me like with a certain high-pitched voice. And as a child, sometimes you kind of tune into the deflection in voices and stuff, and inflection in voices, right? So were you ever able to pinpoint like, right, I wonder, this is why I felt this way?
Yes. So one of the things I've learned that growing up now, I'm able to assess my emotion. Like, I was taught that like my voice and my opinion don't matter. So I used to, I guess when people speak to me in high pitch, I used to just shut down, and like I wasn't taught to that my opinion and what I had said mattered. So when people spoke at me, whatever you said was just this is and done, and that was it.
It's kind of interesting that you came to find the show, and you wanted to come on the show and share your experience, and it totally caught me off guard when Lanzo told me about it. How did the show kind of impact you in that way, like to want to come in here and voice your feelings?
Well, I must say, I want to applaud you all for having this show, because this is not just a show. You're doing great work. This is how we start. The next generation gets better.
Yeah, salute.
And how it affected me, just that we as men, we are taught that our emotion doesn't matter. And having a platform where men could come and express themselves and be vulnerable, it does something that is nice because, even more so in the world in sync is that, men feeling that are shut down and they are just deflected. So seeing the opportunity was really great.
Yeah, I mean the thing about our culture, we don't really explore the different variations, the spectrum of different types of the masculine energy. Because people, like you said, when you're younger, people consider it to be soft, but it wasn't really soft. It was just a different way of seeing the world because you're introverted and stuff like that. And some people don't know how to respond to those types of personalities, especially when they're young. And if you're quiet and stuff there, some people like to fill the gaps with noise if you're too quiet, So
Yeah, I feel like a part of our culture too is we identify men with an emotional awareness as something other than masculine. So you can't be emotionally aware. You can't be compassionate. Or even if you are compassionate, it has to be done in a particular way. It's not necessarily cool for a guy to cry or for a guy to say, hey, this happened to me and this is how I feel.
mm-hmm.
And I think embedded within that, we create a subculture. We create a culture of persons now, because they don't know how to ventilate what their experiences are, and they internalize it so much, then they handle it in improper ways.
I was having a conversation with my girlfriend just this weekend, and we was talking about being polite in the Caribbean feels so much different to being polite like in the States. So like for a female especially, like Aline might say good afternoon. And in our culture, some men will feel like, yo, she checking me out, like she like me. But in America and, bigger countries, I would say, it's just like, it's normal. Like, thanks for holding the door. That's normal. But you tell somebody here, it's almost like an introduction, like a space to make an introduction. Our culture is so different. We don't explore, like even just being polite.
Yeah, I think that's a function of the intimacy. Living on an island that's 68 square miles and 50,000 people. Yeah, I feel like it's a function of that. Everybody knows everybody. So we have politeness narrowed to a certain box. So for you to be polite, it's like morning and good afternoon, please and thank you. But to engage in a meaningful way, like, oh, thank you for holding a door for me. That's politeness, and that's just, showing gratitude. But it's seen as something more because as a culture, we don't necessarily interact unless there's that direct familiarity. We don't interact on that level.
Because in our culture, we do things with a selfish. Most of the time, we do things with a selfish expectation. So if you do something, subconsciously aware that, hey, he asked me for something, he do something for me, expect it in return.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we are being trained that way in a similar way.
I could see that. I could see where we are a culture of we have like a symbiotic nature to our interactions where there's an expectation on the back end. It's not necessarily. And when you find people who are genuine, it's real. It's real. And sometimes you find a genuine person and the culture itself forces that person to adjust unless you're firm as a man or as a woman. Any gender. Sometimes people come into the world and they choose to interact in a wholesome, genuine way. And because they're so genuine and the rest of the world is so dark, we tend to take advantage of that genuineness and force it to shut down as a defense mechanism. Have you experienced that? I mean, I've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, I experienced it. People say, you're too nice.
Yeah, I have experienced it.
Yeah. Okay. So, but let's do some deep diving, Akeem. So, what's one of the real reasons that you wanted to come to the show? I mean, I know Atiba asked and you said that you enjoyed the content, but is there something specifically that you've experienced that you feel like needs to be ventilated, that people need to discuss, and that isn't discussed?
Yes, at the tender age of around 8 or 9, I was raped by a man. And, we don't talk about rape a lot. This is very volatile in our country, but, as soon as it pop up, we shut it down.
And it's so interesting because just this week I was thinking about the pedophilia that exists within Caribbean homes. It's not even just, I think it's Navy's thing. I think just within any culture, there is a certain level of pedophilia. There's a certain level of predatory male behavior, right? And when it happens within families, and I'm not saying that it happened within your family, I don't know the history, but when it happens within families, what I found is for the most part, the families try to shut it down because it brings a sense of shame. So it's like, hey, this is an internal thing, this is a family thing. We can't let anyone know that this is happening in our family. And it's almost, and I can't even say almost, the reality is when we do those types of things, we protect the victimizers and we force the victims into a shell.
But I mean, I think I read a post recently that said like in our society we protect the victimizers and we will shame people who, like, let's say if you have a son or daughter who is gay, you will shame them like publicly. But people who is like the rapists and within your circles, within your families, you would protect them. But but before we even jump into that, I wasn't aware, like, that you had the experience, and I personally I want to say excited for you that you had to go through that as a young man, because I have a son, and I can't imagine that happening, right? And I hope you understand at this point in time in your life that it's not really your fault.
It's not my fault,
right? Because that in itself as well could make you feel as a person like it's your fault growing up with that in your mind. Like you may be blaming yourself until you got the necessary help, to help you move past that type of trauma. Because a lot of people who go through that, they shame themselves.
Yes, they internalize it.
Internalize it, and something, it locks you into a shell within your mind, and you can't even get past that. So in terms of like interacting, you said you interacted with a female and it felt empty to you, and all of that experience could just change your whole interaction with people on a whole, like, on an intimate level. So,
but that's the question I had. How did you process that up until the point that you had you got to the place where you realized I need therapy?
Well, it was affected on me as a child, and like when it happens first, the term that happens when you rape as a child, any happens to anybody, the body and the mind doesn't have the ability to process it at that time. So the term is called disassociation.
Yeah.
So your body and your mind shut down, and you just allow the experience to happen. And like growing up, I was a child still, so I didn't have the ability to assist the situation. So I just normally live in my life, From here to there, a little behavior might be act out, or might be a little bit rude, That's how it showed up sometimes.
did you ever express it to any of the adults around you at the time?
No.
So that's something that you kept within you for a while.
Yes.
Wow, that's tough.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So how long you would say that you held that within your system before you told anyone about that?
I was only I think I was in Nevis in 2015. Like I was in a state of depression.
Yeah.
And I was depressed. I was losing a lot of weight. I was just numb to life, to be honest with you. I was depressed for about a good couple of months, and then
So the depression, so this 2015, that was prior to the therapy. That was prior to you seeking help.
Yes.
Okay.
So, I was depressed. I was home lying down one day in the bed, and like me and the devil just starting a conversation. We don't go take your life. Back. To be honest with you, I had the intention to commit suicide. As soon as I touched the bathroom, this is the bedroom, and there's the bathroom right here. And as soon as I touched the door, I just had a high fever, and I just went in the shower. That was the grace of God. And I told my auntie about it. And 4 seasons to 5 at the time.
Told her about the experience
Yeah,
from when you were 8 years old, or told her about the experience with the fever?
No, told her about the experience when I was younger.
Okay.
So, you know, she came down, the 4 seasons before me, they came back down the following week, and, you know, she came to me, she booked the appointment, and, you know, I went to counseling. You know, when I went to the counseling, I thought it would have been a quick fix. But understanding that, you know, it's a process, and you just gotta trust the process. You might not like it in the beginning, but you just have to trust the process. You know, I was there for the 3 months. I went for about 2 months. I was just going because I needed to go. The change happened to me is when I was watching a movie called A Million One. He had a gentleman named Corey. He was playing basketball. He was a freshman or a sophomore in a university playing basketball. The name of the team was Bulldogs. He had a stroke, and, you know, he went to therapy, got the necessary help he needed. And he wanted to go back to life as he knew it. And, you know, as I paused the movie, you know, my mom they called me, asked me to drop something in town. So I went into town and dropped it off, and I dropped everything in town, went back home, and then I continued to watch the movie, and I just had to break down.
Mm-hmm.
And I just had to cry. And that's when I said the work really began. Because the truth is that I wanted to go back to life as new. I knew it, you know. So I just shut down, cried, let it all out, and came to the realization, like, life as I know it no longer exists, so it has to be a new way of doing things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's when I really started to assess my emotions, really started to do the necessary work that I needed to do. You know, I went for about 4 months. I think it was about about 5 months. It's a 5 month process, to be honest with you. You know, we went to the counseling, we talk about the emotions, some of the things that happened to me. Like, to be honest with you, I thought when I was in high school, I thought I was gay.
You thought that way?
I thought I was gay. You know, the counselor talked to me and tell me that, you know, these are the feelings that happen, you know, to anybody that rapes, you know. It affects you mentally. It does affect you mentally. It affects your sense of worth, the way you trust, like, you trust how you sit in life, and you adapt in the world and move around the world. It does affect that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's heavy, bro.
Yeah.
So high school I could see, and the way that high school is set up here in the Caribbean, the way that we interact in high school, I could see high school being a very lonely place because we have these masculine stereotypes, and they are prominent in the high school environment. So in high school aged boys don't necessarily interact with anyone who presents other than hypermasculine, you know. So what was your high school experience like, dealing with what you were dealing with?
You know, I was very insecure, to be honest with you. You know, I would just try to fit in and try to be friends with everybody. But some of the times, like, I was an introvert, so some of the time I just stay back. Sometimes we connected, you know. It affected the relationship for a while, and through that, you know, I wasn't a type that had a girlfriend, so I was teased on in that situation. And, you know, it brought a lot of insecurities to me.
Okay. But were you pursuing girlfriends? Because you said that you felt like you might have been...
No, not at that time.
So, no girls?
No.
Okay. And so how did you get to a place? Is it after the therapy and you started to find closure? And I'm not even sure if it's closure, but after therapy and going through that process of identifying your emotions and articulating how you really feel, did that bring any comfort to you?
Yes. Yes, it did, you know. Understanding it was no fault of my own, you know. I had no control over the situation.
You felt it was your fault even before the therapy?
No.
Okay.
A little bit, I did feel a little guilty.
Mm.
You know, but going through the therapy, you know, it's no fault of your own. You had no control of the situation. He was an adult, and he abused his power.
Yeah.
But one of the things about rape, one of the things I learned about rape, you know, rape began back in the slavery days. So the master might have liked a young girl, and, you know, in the night he was told her to come inside and he rape her. And so he vice versa to the master's wife. They might say a young boy and rape her. So rape is generational. It's passed on to generation. It's passed on to generation to generation. It's ancestral. It happened to our ancestors. and it's historical. It keeps repeating itself. So rape is not just something now, it began somewhere. It just for us to do the necessary work so we could make sure the next generation gets better and we prevent it from happening.
Do you feel like you were protected as a child? Because of the circumstances. And I'm a parent of young boys. My boys are around that same age. They're probably like 8, 9. And I feel like I do everything that is within my power to protect them. But protection and isolation are two different things. So I can't keep my sons just home with me because I know I would never do that type of thing. They have to interact with people on the outside. Do you feel like as a child, as an 8-year-old, you were protected? Is there some level of protection that could have been provided to prevent something like that from happening?
At the time, I don't think so because I just went out to say to play, to be honest with you. Like I just was a child going out to have fun, to be honest with you. And somebody just saw me and had an opportunity.
Recently I was having a conversation with someone down in my area, and he brought back a memory that I totally forgot. We had this one situation when I was younger in my community. The guy's older than me, but he appeared out of the cane fields, and his pants was like bloody, and he was raped. Right, he was raped by someone as a young kid too. I think he was probably at the time he probably had to be between the ages of like 8 and 12 in there as well. So these things happen, in our community, and it's just that people don't even speak about it, and it happened a lot to women as well. Yeah, because I remember I had one friend of mine who had a daughter, and she told me that her daughter just came home and told her somebody just walked up to her in the middle of the street and grabbed her breast and then walk off. Just assaulted her. Right? And she was probably at the time maybe about 12, 13. Right? So these things happen, and we just, we don't have conversations about them, and people, like we said, they protect them.
And but I feel like to some extent there is a stigma surrounding even verbalizing what you've experienced. Some people, and maybe as an 8-year-old you wouldn't have had that depth of thought, but what I've found just interacting with females and speaking to females that have been sexually assaulted in ways, a lot of them have told me, you are the first person that I've spoken to about this. And when I ask why have you not, sought help? Why have you not gone to the police? They said, listen, in our society, that becomes part and parcel of who you are. People see you as, oh, that's the girl that got raped. Mm-hmm. So it almost dehumanizes you. Mm-hmm. And nobody wants to be dehumanized. So I feel like that is a part of our culture that we need to get past.
And add to that as well is different to when it's a male, because in our culture to be, like gay.
Oh yeah, man, that demasculates you.
That's almost like a death sentence to some people, right? So imagine a female having a difficult time, speaking about it. Somebody in a hyper masculine culture, where being gay, other is kind of like death sentence. So you're gonna hold that in within you, and then in your experience, you're an introvert. So it's just like you have all these things within you that just kind of it's a melting pot for it's like putting gunpowder and fire together.
Yeah, explosion, like a pressure cooker.
And I know you're saying a pressure cooker. So I guess that's where you used to lash out.
Yes.
Yeah.
What brought you to the place of, because based on everything that we've just said, and we've identified that, it's heavy for a male to come forward and say, hey, this has been my experience. What brought you to that place of comfort? Because you have to be supremely comfortable with yourself to, be comfortable sitting face to face with two men and saying, hey, this has been my experience.
I always said earlier up in the year, I had to quit my job. I went and got the necessary help and I needed. I always say this was my self-love, singleness and spiritual journey for this year. So, just going inwardly, because we are body, mind, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
The body is the temple. Most of us, we are taught to use out the external things to cover internal problem. But I'm learning that now I'm on the spiritual journey and practicing spirituality. How you show up and how you act and how you operate is true to what you believe about yourself on the inside. So, I wouldn't say I'm a Christian, but I'm a spiritual person. I'm a God-fearing man. And just, just gaining the word of God and just getting to know me and how I operate and just assessing the situation and, just like the way I started my journey is that, every morning I got up, I said 10 affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
I am kind, I am love, I am enough, I am worthy, I'm not my past, I'm not my flaws, I'm not my mistakes. Then I will say I am enough, I know. I love Akim unconditionally. I love me enough to let people go. I guess is that having that conversation with yourself. Because the way that we speak to ourselves, good or bad, it does harm us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that way, like in the Bible it says, so as a man thinketh, so he is, right?
Yes.
So I guess you putting in the necessary work and thoughts, to vibrate on a different frequency.
Yeah. One of the scriptures that gave me satisfaction, in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, verse 2, it says, write your vision down clear, though you may tarry, everything is for appointed time. A lot of us, we want to get somewhere, we might be struggling or something. We want it to happen when we want it.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't understand that, it takes time. It's a process. Like one of the things I learned, most valuable lesson I learned is that through this process, it taught me to slow down gratification. Because we live in a world, you go online, you can order this in the next week after you get it.
Mm-hmm.
So we quick to get what we want, but you don't understand, you just breaking it, taking it step by step, and just understanding it is a building block for you to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it happened to me, but, it's in the past, I have no control over it.
Yeah, and it doesn't define you.
It doesn't define who I am.
For your spiritual journey and your mental health, what type of books do you read?
To be honest, I read some nice, really great books this year, to be honest with you. I read a book called Relationship Code by Tom Michael. That really helped me. He talked about singleness, like getting to know who you are, what you want, like doing things by yourself, like getting to know what your dislikes are, what you want in a relationship, like what are your expectations, how do you want to live, those kind of stuff. And I read a book by a man named Sunday Adele, Building Goals, Building Systems. He taught you how to become goal-oriented. And even though he became about goal-oriented, one of the things I learned, he taught about critical thinking. So that really helped me. Then I read the 5 love languages. We should love in different ways. Everybody love languages different. And he taught me that, we are emotional beings. We are emotional beings, and like when your emotional cup don't get filled as a child, you go out and look for it somewhere else.
Definitely.
And one of the things I'm doing right now is that every morning I try to read, I go on Psychology Today, online magazine, and I try to read an article. So I've been reading an article about how emotions of women are affected. He talked about how trauma affects you. And the next article I read was how like the pandemic is affecting people mentally.
Listening to you speak about like your daily routines and stuff like that, it's almost like you picture somebody in the garden, weeding out, every day. They're going to the garden and make sure that they're just taking care of the plants and nurturing and, make sure they're putting up water here and, you know what I mean? That's what that sounds like to me. So you're kind of building up you know what I mean? Lanza, find the word for me, man. Use the wordsmith.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
This man does save me all the time, but he ain't saving me today.
Well, one of the things I learned through the journey too, I'm learning that the most important relationship in the world is the one with yourself.
Yeah, the relationship with self.
Yeah, that's the most important relationship, I'm a genuine, I think, every time I like to say I'm a genuine human being, a very nice human being you meet. And, I used to give too much of myself to people. So I gave too much of myself to people, so I didn't get time to pour into myself.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the jobs of every individual in life is not to be selfish, but to be selfful.
Mm-hmm.
So selfful to me is doing the things that serve me, like going to the beach once a month, like maybe once a week I go down to the coffee shop Important time, just be by myself, walk with my tablet, walk with my journal, maybe read something, assess my emotions, maybe exercising, doing yoga. Those are the things that make me feel full. And knowing what you need for yourself, like in this season I'm right now, like if I go to pursue a relationship with any woman, like I didn't break it, it's not my job to fix it. It might sound like I'm being bad, but you have the skill set, and if I can do it, you can do it. And being able to, I would like her to assess her, I would like her to bring her whole self-independence into the relationship. Because one of the things I learned about relationship, we are not there to take away from the relationship, but we are there to add value. And when somebody comes into a relationship and takes from it, the relationship can no longer sustain itself. Because we are just there to pour into the relationship. So you might come with financial, I might come emotional. So we just here to build each other.
Yeah.
I assess you in that situation, you assess me in the situation.
Yeah, we talk about all the time that you're not supposed to, your happiness is not dependent on your partner. They're only supposed to add to your happiness, but they can't take away from your base.
Yes.
So you're supposed to come into the relationship already whole, and the person just add like value, as you're saying. Yeah. Throughout your journey, have you met anyone that had the same experience as you? And yeah.
Yeah, definitely, Kind I met a young lady. She actually got raped this year, to be honest with you. It was early up in the year, I could also see the body language and it being what I've been through, I know some of these signs, and I really asked her how she's feeling. She told me, I actually spoke to her 2 days ago, and she told me, she's going to counseling and getting help. It does put you in shock. Everybody's experience is different.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just try to talk to them because, I think I could give them a word of wisdom, understanding that, you're no fault of your own, Assess your emotion the best way you can. You might not be doing it the proper way, but that's the best way you know to do it. So do it to your best of your ability.
So part of your journey being self-full and stuff like that, and almost like recharging yourself and filling your cup, as to speak, is it to, at some point, be able to, help somebody else, like, who been through a similar situation as you?
I think definitely yes, Definitely yes, yeah. I don't know how it's going to plan out in the future, but definitely yes.
And just to change the conversation just a bit, before we got on air, you told me you was a chef. Was cooking a part of like your therapy as well, like growing up?
I would say a little bit, to extent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just here absorbing, the moment, because for me, I feel like that's one of the vilest parts of the human nature, the ability to take advantage of innocence. I feel that's the darkest part of humanity, that people could actually see something that is pure and make a conscious decision to defile it. And it touches me in an emotional place. And what I've come to understand, and just through research, is that people who are hurt other people.
Because most people who are raped have been raped themselves.
Yeah. So the victim becomes the victimizer. And it creates a perpetual cycle.
Yes, it does.
A cycle of darkness. And so it's just like a generational curse where somebody has to make the conscious decision to break it. You have to make the conscious decision to go in a different direction.
And that's something that me personally want to commend you on, because you really take a step in breaking that chain.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Because, I try to put myself in the same, in the same shoes and try to understand like how I would deal with it, but that's heavy.
I can't even imagine it, because I know who I am as a person. I'm very cerebral, so I think a lot. And experiences play a heavy part in my day-to-day in terms of recollection and just sitting down and reliving a certain experience. So if I did something today or something negative happened, and I find, it's in overdrive when it's a negative experience. So a positive experience, I might think about it, but something negative, I could dwell on that. So I can't even imagine going. I think that takes a depth of strength.
Yeah, man, because it's so easy to go dark and stay in dark side, because it's much easier than going to the light.
That's true.
So how did you avoid the darkness? Because there is a darkness that's
associated with that. He said as well, like he was tampering in it, right?
He lashed out
and stuff, but
he didn't really say that he went into the dark side.
But
he exploded.
Yeah.
Well, what did that? Well, I just know. Me want even the devil I wouldn't wish that it's not a nice experience for anybody. I wouldn't
Mhm.
wish it for anybody, and I wouldn't want to do it to anybody. And I just wanted to break it, because I do want to have children of my own one day, and I want my child to be able to be look at his father as proud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that give me motion and motivation, and just like I think one of the things I want to do is leave it in a better place than I found it. To be honest with you.
I mean, ask you a different kind of question as well, because you said you went through a period where you thought you was gay,
Yeah.
right? When you came out of the realization that like I'm not really gay, I had this experience, and this kind of. At any point, did you have any like resentment towards people who were gay, or even during the time when you thought you was gay, did you had any resentment towards people who was gay?
At the time, yes, but now looking back at it, the average adult has this self-control of a 5-year-old, and it's nothing personal. Some people just don't have the life skill to deal with certain situations. They just not aware of how to deal with certain things. So back then, I would say it affected me. But now looking back at it, it wasn't personal. They was doing the best they could, and the experiences shaped them how to be, and that's how they operated.
Yeah, I mean, and in our culture, we really sometimes lash out against people who are gay and stuff like that, right? And instead of understanding that sometimes people are just people, right? And people just living their life from their own experience, because they're living as well. They're having a human experience as well.
Well, if I'm completely honest, for a very long time, I would say, ambivalent towards people that had that sexual orientation. So if somebody was gay, I would make a conscious effort to distance myself from them in every way. So I had in my mind that I shouldn't even necessarily get close to a homosexual, because I don't even know what I felt. I think it was something that I just adopted from the culture. I grew up in a very masculine, hyper masculine environment. Like, it's all fighting and rascals, and so I saw homosexuality as wrong. I couldn't conceptualize it. I didn't understand it. Is becoming a man and having conversations and realizing that trauma changes people. So some persons who didn't necessarily have that inclination or would have otherwise been different based on the trauma, it triggers something and they just start to behave and they act out in certain ways and they seek solace. And I realized that also when you behave a certain type of way within our culture and you're isolated from the friend group that you would want to identify with, then obviously, because we are beings that seek community.
We are social beings.
Yeah. So as a social being, you're going to fall into the group that accepts you.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a story about a young man who was, I think, effeminate in some of his behaviors, but he was too young to express or to explore homosexuality. And because his peers didn't accept him, the girls accepted him, and the guys who were decidedly homosexual, they also accepted him, and he just became that. He became homosexual because he wanted to fit into a group, and it's interesting because you never know what someone's journey is.
True, because we only see the finished product. We don't see what happened, what led them up to that point of view.
Yeah.
I mean, you remember one time I sent you this interview with this guy, and he was, well, a person, and it was like completely masculine, and then they revealed that they were like a hermaphrodite as well. Like all that's all, and that stuff is real. People having real experiences, and it's just like it kind of makes you wonder, like what people. Can you see people every day and you don't even know, what they're going through mentally, right? Because they might not feel accepted, especially in this culture. This culture is very rigid, So, I mean, I can remember one of my first experiences up in the States when I was working. I had this conversation with this guy at work, And we used to talk like for months. Talk, just have conversation. He was big on like religion and like, history and stuff. So we used to have all these conversations. And then maybe at a point, he kind of revealed to me that he is gay, right? And he had I think he had a husband or something. Right? I'm not sure, but when he revealed it to me, it was like, this isn't what people tell me gay was, because I used to feel like when you hear somebody's gay,
Yeah.
that they're gonna attack you, and be like, no, it wasn't even that. Like we could have real conversations, and that kind of started to change things for me when I was younger. Because when I was in me like between teens and early 20s, I was in the same position as you, where it felt like it was culturally wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
To me, I have a friend who is gay, At one point in time, it wasn't acceptable to me, but, as I grew and I learned that, his life experiences shaped how he operates, and it's nothing personal, to be honest with you. And, once a week, we'll get together and we'll talk, and we have very great conversations,
Mm-hmm.
He's somebody who I really value as a genuine friend, Once the guy didn't support it, but, I support his lifestyle.
It's just him, he has having support his human experience.
Yes.
I mean, I had friends that people used to tell me that were gay, but I used to be in denial of it because I wasn't really thinking like that. And like, people who was close, like almost like family members. And it was normal. We used to have conversations. All of us used to hang out as kids and stuff like that. And people used to be like, oh, like he's an anti-man, that's it. And and that was just it. But you look at those guys, to them we have conversations. I see them as family to me. Like, we gotta have conversations, like long form conversations, and it's not a problem.
Yeah, I feel like it's important for us as men to identify humanity first. Because if we put people into categories, then we create isolations.
Mm-hmm.
And isolation is never really good. If you look at someone for who they are as a person and just their humanity, because what I've grown to accept is your orientation means nothing as it relates to the level of interaction that we could share. So you can be inclined to whatever you choose to incline yourself to sexually, but you can be one of the most genuine people that I can ever meet. And it's through exposure, it's through my job, and I'm exposed to, a global network of people. I've met persons who are hyper competent, who are secure in who they are, homosexual men, and they've shown me nothing but respect. We've never had any conversations about sexuality, and I've realized that is not, being a homosexual does not necessarily define the entirety of their life. That's just the way that they choose to show.
That's
love.
a personal life.
Right.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
personal life.
Yeah, so, and I feel like
Well, we seem like we're just about to get our first in studio call. So,
okay.
oh, they hang up. We can call back, please.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like it's important for us as men to have these conversations, so, because they aren't explored. And if you leave them unexplored, then they create pockets. Okay, I think we have a call on the line.
Hello, good afternoon.
Caller, your life.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. I
Hey.
think this might be the first time I ever called into WINNFM.
How are you?
I am excellent. I just wanted to call you guys and commend you for such a great and powerful show. And of course, Akeem, because Akeem knows I have a lot of love for Akeem. He's like a son to me. I love him. I'm just really proud of him and his journey. I feel you're a little hard on yourself because Akeem, if anybody knows him, is just a really genuine and good and kind person, very quiet and maybe very misunderstood, but a very kind and genuine and good person. And I think it's just so powerful that you would come out to share this journey, because I think that we're not honest in speaking about how much young men in our community who are now even older men that have had this experience but are unable to speak of it. So I hope that having this experience and having spoken of it, that what good would have come from this horrible thing is that other people would feel that they have a better understanding of some of the struggle they've been through, and that it's a journey, and he's on his journey. And I'm just really, really proud of him.
Thank
And
you.
really, really proud of you guys in this show and creating an opportunity for somebody to be this honest in this forum. And I hope people will show support and really honor that level of honesty and truth, because it's really important, especially in a culture that really engages in so much toxic masculinity, and really a lot of things you talked about, take kindness for weakness, and a very transactional something for something, and these people are too kind, too soft, too nice, or he must be gay, he has too much feelings, or he's too vulnerable. But really, we long for this vulnerability, and it really is a real sign of manhood to be able to be vulnerable. And you're still a man. You just, like, men have feelings just like us, and to know that we experience some of the same things. I talk a lot about trauma, and a lot of the times people think, oh, just women experience trauma and young girls experience trauma, but our young men also experience trauma, and it's even more difficult for them, because who do you tell about that without feeling like people are going to shame you, or judge you, or make you feel like you might have done something to contribute to the abuse that happens to you. So I'm just really, really proud of Akeem. I just really wanted to call in. I think this was really my first time calling calling to support Akeem and the entire panel, of course, for this great show, and really for this strong showing of truth and honesty.
All right, we appreciate you. Thank you so
Thank you
much,
so
Carla.
much.
I was reading an article the other day and you just jumped out at me. I would like to share it with you. It's from psychology today. The healthiest response to childhood emotional wounds is also the worst. When the trauma first occurs, we recognize the violation it has caused to our sense of self, feel the natural emotions that follow, and then realize the violation doesn't say anything about us personally. And thus we do not make negative meanings of it and can let it go. But because emotions like anger and sadness are painful, and because crying or confronting others is often not socially acceptable, this process doesn't happen automatically. Instead, we suppress our emotions rather than feel or process them as a child. This process is even difficult, and then can feel like a pinprick to an adult, but an insult to one's appearance at the age they could brush off at 40. Can feel like a stab wound to a child and create lasting damage effects, body dysmorphia and depression. When we carry these emotional stab wounds with us into adulthood, and they affect our relationships, career, happiness, health, and everything. That is until we process them by feeling our feelings. Even the most loving, attentive parents can do lasting damage to our sense of self. Meanwhile, and hating to see us hurt, our parents may rush in after an upsetting episode. Don't feel bad, it's okay. Our caregivers said that when started to cry, the truth is feeling bad can do good for us. We need to feel bad for a while and think about why we felt that way. Or maybe our parents weren't loving and attentive, and they demanded that we stop crying when we felt hurt. Either way, we didn't learn how to feel our feelings productively. When we learn that emotions are temporary and fleeting, that they have a predictable beginning, middle, and end, and that we will survive. We don't learn how to feel our feelings. We start to intercept all our emotions as terrifying. As children, we can't distinguish our feelings and ourselves. We think we are our feelings. If our feelings are treated as acceptable in a certain situation, we will decide that we are unacceptable. To heal our trauma, we have to complete the process that should have begun decades ago, when wounding incidents happen.
Okay. All right.
Powerful.
Powerful. So that has been our show.
Yeah, I wish we could dive into that, but this is
Yeah, I mean, we have a number of guests that we have to do
part two.
a part 2 for. And Akeem, we probably might have to have you onto the show to explore a little bit more into vulnerability, masculine vulnerability. I think that's a conversation that we should have. So this has been the He Nuh show
Yeah.
on WINNFM 98.9. As usual, guys, tap into us on social media, and we'll have this show posted. So, good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening.
You found the sound. 98.9. Win FM.
We now bring you the Win FM News. The Win FM News is brought to you by Carrie Brewery, SL Hoxfords and Company Limited, Rams Trading, Beacon.